Arnold Nelson wasn't a man who necessarily enjoyed meeting new people. He did not like networking, did not like schmoozing. He would prefer a solitary afternoon with a fishing pole. So when his wife suggested that they attend the third wedding of a distant relative, he just couldn't face it. So he made up a fictional story. He told his wife, I'd love to go, but I've got this important business meeting. In reality, what he planned to do was take the train up to Saugatuck, Michigan, where there's a beautiful little trout stream called the Allegan. And he planned on a weekend of peace and quiet. Now, what Arnold didn't know was that the town of Fenville, which is right near Saugatuck, was scheduled that weekend to introduce their first scheduled Amtrak train stop. And they had planned this big festival, and they had hired a band and cheerleaders and reporters were going to be there, and they were going to name the festival after the first person to step off the train. So I think you can guess what happened. Arnold Nelson headed north on his secret getaway weekend, and thinking he was getting off at the train stop near Saugatuck, he stepped out of the train in Fenville, only to be met with flashing flash bulbs, cheering cheerleaders, and instant unwanted fame. If you happen to be in Michigan in the beginning of October, stop by the Arnold Nelson Festival. They still hold it every year. And while you're there, step over to the bandstand, and I am sure you will hear a rousing rendition of jazz fanfare. came into existence as the result of a bet. The composer, Uday Bowman, was strolling down the street with his friend Ed in Brooklyn, and this man was known locally as Raggedy Ed, and he proposed to Uday that he was going to get wealthy by opening a pawn shop right here on 12th Street. And Uday Bowman tried to talk him out of it. He said, "Come on, really, you can't get rich on a pawn shop. That's ridiculous. If you could get rich running a pawn shop, I could write a hit song using only 3 notes." Well, you guessed it, 12 years later, Raggedy Ed was one of the wealthiest men in Brooklyn. And so Uday Bowman just had to write a hit song with only 3 notes. A year after it was written, Louis Armstrong recorded it, and in 1948 it reached #1 on the Billboard charts. Uday Bowman lived just long enough to see the day. He passed away the following year. But how do you think he would have felt if he knew that his #1 hit song would one day become the background music for a show called SpongeBob SquarePants? Autumn Leaves dates back to the end of the Second World War. It is a sad French song about longing for a lost loved one. It was first translated into English by the American composer Johnny Mercer. A decade later, it was performed by a piano soloist named Roger Williams. That performance would become the only piano solo ever to make the #1 slot on the Billboard charts. Over the years, the song has been performed by hundreds of artists. Among those, Nat King Cole, Doris Day, Andy Williams, Frank Sinatra, the Coasters, the Everly Brothers, Jerry Lee Lewis, Eric Clapton, and Bob Dylan. It remains the signature tune of the Blue Coats Drum and Bugle Corps. And the lyrics carry a powerful message. They remind us to treasure every moment with those we love, because life is fleeting and brief. Toccata rhythmica is a painful condition of the lower back. It involves a large nerve that starts in the spinal column. It goes through the pelvic girdle into the leg. Usually caused by spinal disc herniation. The symptoms can make it...
No.
Excuse me, I think she has a question.
That's sciatica.
Yeah.
This is toccata rhythmica.
Hang on. Okay, toccata is an Italian term originating with the word toccare, to touch. It is a virtuoso performance designed to exhibit the dexterity and the technique of the artist. The early toccatas were written for harpsichord, and they were fast, lightly fingered compositions without fugal interludes. Rhythmica is a Spanish word that refers to rhythmic gymnastics performed to music. So I can see why the composer, Michael Joy, decided to combine these two terms into toccata rhythmica for handbells. first into this original composition by Kathleen Wissinger, you will recognize 8 bars of a song that you all know, Madam Librarian. Did you know that the song Madam Librarian was actually about a real person? Her name was Marilyn Seeley. She was from Provo, Utah. And the composer, Meredith Willson, had met her during World War II. And he had fallen in love. He went back and he wrote a musical about her. It was set in his own hometown of Mason City, Iowa. Although, you know, in the show, it was called River City, to be diplomatic. The musical was beset with difficulty. Wilson wrote 40 drafts of the musical and discarded them one after another. He wrote 40 songs and he discarded 22. The first producer quit in frustration. Then the production ran into delays that went on for years. In fact, you could say that the show had trouble. Trouble with a capital T, and that rhymes with P, and that stands for pool. Oh yes, you have got to find a way to keep those young ones moral after school, because you see, we have, excuse me, I think she has a question. You would like me to sit down. If you need any help with this number, I'll be right over. Ricardo Montalban. People, they always say to me, Ricardo, they say, is that finest Corinthian leather? I say, but of course. Why not have the very best? Is like this song, about which I know nothing. I know nothing. But it's a good song because it has lots of notes. It has a lot of notes, and that's good. And also because it has a lot of ringing of bells, and that is very good. So, Ascension, run on the finest Corinthian bells. established that technological change always leads to unintended social consequences. I don't have to tell you that the internet and the cell phone and the surveillance society have changed the way that we view the world. But let's look back at the 50s. The jet airliner became available in that decade to the common person, and it changed the way that people would vacation. It used to take a long, tedious ocean voyage to get to some destinations that in the 50s became available by a short hop by air. People who used to maybe drive to the Jersey Shore or drive to a cabin on the lake had the option of going to exotic islands. And those people who went to exotic islands brought back with them a new, hip, young style of music called calypso. But actually, calypso wasn't new. It had been around the Caribbean for 100 years or more. For instance, the song Yellow Bird was written in 1893 by a fellow named Monance Menard. And he performed this song for over half a century before the jet set brought it to America. Now, you've heard this song before, but I'll bet you've heard it on steel drums. Tonight, Bells in Motion will bring it to you not on steel, but on bronze. title, Clappers and Flappers, of course, refers back to the Roaring '20s and to those stylish ladies who defied convention by wearing flamboyant new styles, by cutting their hair short, by rolling their stockings down, and most outrageous of all, driving their own automobiles. Goodness, what is the world coming to? Women in automobiles. But the 1920s was also characterized by sustained economic prosperity, by the introduction of a lot of new things like radio, telephone, and motion pictures. It was also characterized by speakeasies that served illicit liquor in teacups, and there was a corresponding rise in crime. And it seemed to people that the modern age had arrived all at once. And the soundtrack for that fast, new, exciting time was jazz and blues and ragtime. Bells in Motion would like to transport you back to the Roaring '20s with Clappers and Flappers. The overture for the Barber of Seville has a complex, convoluted history that stretches back over 200 years, but I'll try to condense it into about a minute and a half. In 1775, a French playwright named Beaumarchais wrote a series of plays about an enterprising rascal named Figaro. Now here's where it gets complicated. Two Italian composers, Rossini and Paisiello, decided they would both write an opera based on one of Beaumarchais' plays. Both men wrote their opera. Both men released their opera at about the same time, and both men hired hecklers to interfere with the other man's production. So you had these riots breaking out in European cities between followers of Rossini and followers of Paisiello. Rossini versus Paisiello. Mamma mia. It's quite a mess. But over time, it was Rossini who became the most popular and whom we know today. In our time, Rossini's operas have been sung by the finest opera singers of our generation. From Pavarotti to, well, Robin Williams. Now, if it would help, and I think it would, I would be more than willing to sing an aria from Rossini to familiarize you. I just hang on a moment. An aria from Rossini.
No.
Excuse me, I think she has a question. Yes? Would you like me to sit down? Okay. If you need any help with this piece, again, I'll be right back here. Okay, I'm sitting. exit the sanctuary tonight, for just a few dollars, Bells in Motion will provide you with a translucent plastic disc inside a transparent plastic box. It's guaranteed to amaze and astound your friends as you proudly display it in your home. Also, Casey Congdon, who is the director of Bells in Motion, would like to extend heartfelt thanks to the staff and congregation of First Federated for making this facility available tonight and for the warm welcome that you all provided. She would also like to thank these ringers who travel in from all over the Midwest at least once a month to spend a day putting together concerts like these for audiences like you.
Thank you so much to the Bells of Motion for coming here to Peoria. Thank you to all of you for coming out to support them. And it's moments of logistics. They do have a wonderful website you can get to help support them. That is bellsofmotion.org. You can look them up on the internet and support them in the variety of fashions that exist there, as well as seeing their next and upcoming concerts, which I believe you'll be up in Peoria area in December. Maybe so December, they'll be back up this direction. So check that out and support them. And then as we are leaving the building today, Sheridan is out this way. Florence is right behind us, and the parking lot is west. Go west, young man, and you'll find your way out. Thank you so much for being here at First Federated Church, and we look forward to seeing you again in the future.